Welcome to the Leading with Empathy podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Murray, and today's guest is Miriam Wood. Miriam is a beautiful soul, a wonderful human being. She is a men's coach. She helps men with a plan when shit hits the fan, which I really like. And in this episode, we talk about her background from working in nightclubs, being in the fitness industry, through her networking, and all of these things that make up her extensive knowledge and understanding. Miriam is one of these people who really connects with you and shares a bit more about herself. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Miriam Wood. Hello, Miriam. How are you?
I'm really well, thanks. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm great. It's exciting to have you on the podcast and to see your smiling face and get to spend a little bit of time with you. So, look, maybe just give us a little bit of the Miriam Wood story. What's your background? Where did you come from? What are you doing now? Give us sort of the quick rundown.
Oh gosh. The quick rundown is background originally is in the fitness industry, which was funny because I studied Middle Eastern politics at uni and then wasn't quite sure where to take that. And then fell into the fitness industry sort of by an accident conversation, fell into IT further on from there with one of those conversations, and have also ended up running nightclubs and teaching sales training and all sorts of fun things, all through one opportunity or one bizarre conversation leading to another. But interestingly, where I'm at now with coaching and focusing on men, if I look back to those early days, studying Middle Eastern politics and then into training, fitness, education, even running nightclubs and my most recent work in IT as well, it's all been fueled by an interest in how people think and how they operate as well. So I now see the connection, even though that background story sounds a little bit funny, to where I've ended up now.
Yeah, it sounded like the ingredients of the strangest salad you could ever imagine. So, um, tell me, because I'm not sure that there's that many people who studied Middle Eastern politics and ended up working in nightclubs or any of those other things. Why Middle Eastern politics, if I can ask?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I always just found it really interesting. And it's so when you're making these sort of decisions about university, when you're sort of 17 or 18, sometimes those decisions make sense and sometimes it's just on a bit of a whim. But I think I was always really interested in something that seemed so far away and seemed so different from me growing up in, suburban Sydney. But digging underneath it, it was really, I suppose, the sociology. It was just trying to understand different people, different attitudes, different beliefs. So whatever it was that captivated me to it, it was really around people and how societies work and how you get people to make decisions. And at the time when I was studying, which was a very long time ago, the worst problem in the world was Saddam Hussein, whereas now we've sort of moved on. But even back then it was, how is it that societies and groups of people can all somehow figure out how to live harmoniously? And then you see that in workplaces, thinking about empathy as well. You see these themes crop up, and that belief that surely we can help people operate better, that they can feel better, that somehow we can find some peace and productivity. I think that was the underlying theme. I just didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, it is it's a fascinating study into why people do what they do. And the Middle East has such long history of civilizations, of societies, of different
Mm.
groups, and of power struggles that go on and today and presumably will go on for some time. I think that fascination with people is really interesting. So
Mm.
how do you deploy that sort of fascination for people into the work you do today around, coaching men in particular?
Mm.
Because men can be horrible, right? We can be really tough eggs to crack, and there's a whole bunch of stereotypes that sit around men. I heard a podcaster say the other day, men are the problem. They're the problem of a whole society, particularly men like me, white middle-aged men, old
Mm.
men. So, you've stepped into dealing with us, with me's. How do you? Why focusing on that area?
Yeah, and it's funny, so many people ask me that, and honestly, my response from the heart is, well, I actually really love men, and I don't know, that sounds funny, but I've worked with men most of my life in actually picking up on the nightclub theme as well. Even though I was running a nightclub, very sort of, logistics focused. If I look back on that time again now, and I think if a DJ came in anxious, tired, overwhelmed, they're often booked back to back and flying around the world, which sounds glamorous, but I promise you it's not. Often they'd come into the club, I'd give them a hug and a cup of tea and get them to do a bit of breathing just to actually calm them. But the version that I would see and what I was actually drawn to doing, but I didn't even know I was coaching back then. I just thought that was the right thing to do. As I saw these amazing guys that have got this incredible gift, but when a man is overwhelmed, when there's an incredible amount of pressure and they're not getting space to really just be and then get back into working their craft, that's when you can see the shadow side, or that's when you can see an unpleasant side. Women are not exempt from this, by the way, but I think starting to work so closely with men and having those one-on-one relationships, either say in the workplace, running a club, or then into leadership positions in other organizations, and then with a team reporting to me as well. I think I just developed such an appreciation for how the masculine thinks, the way they operate, what they need to be at their best as well. So call it a crazy thing, whatever it is, I just feel like that is where my best work is, because, and I truly believe this, a man at his best, in his healthiest, feeling good, strong, purposeful and confident, you guys are beautiful. Like, what an amazing force to have in the world. Better fathers, better partners, better contributors to the community. So my thinking generally around coaching and what I do, instead of focusing on what we don't want, right? It's like when you're trying to run away from the thing that you don't want. Like, I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be overweight. All you do is focus on the poor characteristics. And it can be the same with whatever's going on with men at the moment. But how about we focus on the majority of amazing characteristics and the majority of amazing men, and actually expand that, instead of focusing on actually what is probably a small component of stuff that no one likes.
What are some of the I guess common challenges or struggles you see men going through, and what do you think drives those things?
Oh gosh, I've been talking to so many men, particularly over the past month or so. So I've been doing a bit of travel around Australia. Loneliness is coming up a lot. The challenge of making friends, and even when some sort of catalyst can happen, which was something that I saw last year with a lot of guys in my life, both the guys on my team and my clients, as well as my friends, is turning 50. And that sort of midpoint, and it can happen again at 60 as well, but it seems to be, 50 is kind of that magical number, or what can herald the start of the midlife crisis. So often when a guy is nearing the 50 mark, well, there's a relationship change, like a separation or a divorce, or even a rethinking around sexuality, gender, redundancy, burnout. So these are big changes, big things that go on in a guy's life. And what I've seen happening with guys around me, and ones that I've been speaking to, is they become a bit like a deer in the headlights, which is, hang on, I was able to make all these decisions and I've been a someone all my life, right? Like, I've been a lawyer, been a recruiter, whatever it might be. They get wrapped up in the identity, and they've done all the right things. They got the qualification or the trade, the money, the house, the family. They've been a provider, but then just something will stop them in their tracks, and that's where the wheels will start to come off. And then where those themes around loneliness or feeling disconnected come up, is they sometimes look around and realize that their friends are really just the parents of their kids' friends, or they're getting together with mates, but they're having superficial conversations. So it's been really interesting, just with the data coming back to me from my coaching clients and from just conversations I have. Of course, I'm talking to men all the time in what I do. So it's a big one. And we know that the extreme of that is the alcoholism and suicide that we see going on. And like, I'm not okay with that. So there is something really going on for men. And if I can help in any way, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, it's those issues are pretty huge in terms of statistics and the numbers of people. The
Mm,
the interesting thing, I guess, I'd love to explore some more is we're in a more connected society than ever before.
mm,
Apparently, making friends is just clicking the blue button on Facebook. What do you think's happened that we've gone from being able to build those sorts of relationships to not
mm,
anymore? This doesn't sound like it should be a new problem. It should be less of a problem now than it was before, but
mm.
something's changed. What are your thoughts on that?
I think for anyone watching this as well, you just have to think we might be more connected, but are we digitally connected versus connected in a real authentic way? We often say that we're busy, and that's just probably the new minimum standard now. But we're busy as well because we've got so many different forms of connection taking up space. So if you've got messages, WhatsApp, Teams, Slack, Zoom, email, calls, like there's a lot going on. And that's just different forms of getting things done, let alone our family lives and social lives and any other commitments. So I think and again, this seems to be, even though women, of course, have their own busyness and things going on for women. Trust me, I understand. What I have noticed with a lot of men that I have worked with as well is that they're often getting up, getting straight into kids, family life, whatever it is, straight into the day, straight into task execution as well. And then you finish. And if you're working from home, you might not have much separation between your work and then your family life. You're sort of finishing here and then home's just there. So when a guy's not getting a lot of space to be strategic, to really think, to have proper connection with his mates as well, I feel like that's where that disconnection, in juxtaposition to the overconnectedness that we have now, is really starting to happen. We're rushed.
Yeah, yeah, and look, the busyness is only going to increase in many ways. I suspect if we
Mhm.
let it, and yeah, I certainly feel that tension between, oh, should I be doing more work, and you've got to work really hard to keep things going, and interest rates are going up, and you need more coming in, and all those sorts of challenging pressures that that mount. And
Mm,
in our world, it's sometimes easier to deprioritize the catch up with actual friends, or to make that time to have that phone call. And
mm,
what are some of the what can I do? How can I do? If you're going to help, but
yeah.
I can't find more time because the time's pretty finite. Um, it is about prioritizing, but there's that tension around how do I make those decisions, or how do I find that balance?
Mm. Well, I think, coming back even into the empathy theme as well, it's looking at empathy to ourselves and how we ask good questions of what it is that we need. And of course, that can sound like, what's the difference between saying to someone, "Oh, how you going?" versus what is going on for you at the moment? What's going on with work? How's the family? Like it's just asking maybe slightly more specific questions about what it is that you want to know of either someone else, but also starting to do a bit of reflection for yourself as well. I've got a client who feels so busy with family and work that we factored his bit of 5-minute reflection and time where he takes just 3 conscious breaths in the car after school drop off. And if for whatever reason that doesn't work because he gets a call, I'm like, well, you're going to stay in the bathroom just a couple of minutes longer then if your if that bathroom visit is your only safe space. It's not waiting for the perfect time where you sit down with your diary, and even then you might be like, oh, what the hell do I write? It's not waiting for all these perfect times where there's rainbows or whatever. It's taking the simple moments that we have and actually it could be developing a practice of asking a couple of questions of yourself. And how am I feeling at the moment? What do I need? Could be around practicing how you communicate your needs to your partner if you have one as well. There's lots of different ways. It's looking at, if you've got a couple of close friends, then that's fantastic. You can actually start a different sort of topic with them. I've another client that I'm working with, he's set up a group called Steaks with Mates. And I don't know if this is a thing already with other men, but whether there's original material. But anyway, he and the guys get together once a month because they're all got, young families, and they stay in touch with each other on WhatsApp and just have a little check-in. But he said it's that knowing that I've got something to look forward to. And when they get together for the Steaks with Mates, he said they go deep, and they're all sort of practicing up leveling each other. So they're just a few ideas.
Yeah, the I think it's a great idea. I have a regular golf trip. We do it twice a year only, but and we get away, and it's something that I look forward to for most of the year. And I think you're right, having those real conversations, spending that time actually chatting to each other is powerful. The challenge, I guess, or the pushback I hear from men and people like me, maybe even my inner voice, is I've got so many other things to do. I haven't got time to go to the doctor. I think this is a classic one for men. We're notoriously bad at going to, my people ask, "Oh, well, who's your GP?" I'm like, whoever I book. I don't know. I don't go that often. I don't have a medical file somewhere, I don't think. And what you're talking about is really prioritizing self. What advice would you, or what do you say to men who will say, "Look, I'm too busy to do those things. I'm too busy to see someone like yourself." Maybe they're sitting there going, "Gee, that is me. I need that help, but I haven't got the time, or I don't want to devote those extra resources to that when there's so much else to do."
Yeah. That came up for me recently, actually, with one of the guys that I was working with, and we actually had a look. We did a bit of work together, and a bit of work can be a 5-minute conversation, by the way. We were actually just starting to look at, well, why is it important? Like, I'm not here to convince anyone that you should prioritize yourself, because sometimes when we use those words like, "Oh, you should," or it's not good if you don't do that, like that's quite judgmental language. But we just dove a little bit deeper on his why. And and he said, "Oh, I just want to be a good dad and sort of want to be a better role model." And he wasn't prioritizing his health or anything to do with what we're talking about. And so when we got down to it, after what's it costing you if you don't, and really digging deep on the why, we were able to anchor his prioritizing of himself. And we've developed a really short routine that he can do in the morning, just to have that bit of space for him, which is of course then making a huge difference. But linking why you do what you do to the thing that really matters. So if you do have friends, if you do have family, and thinking about how to be the best version of yourself and how it might impact them. And if you don't have any of that around you and you're focused more on career at the moment, thinking about, if you don't do this, what's impact? What is it actually costing you? So I think, if you're getting curious around the questions that you're asking of yourself, and whether you do that with a coach, whether you just do that on your own, it can be a bit uncomfortable, because ultimately, if you're not prioritizing yourself in some way, it is going to have some sort of consequence. And it's just figuring out, instead of, like I said, waiting for that perfect opportunity where you've got a whole day to yourself, or, all the stars align. I'm not about that. Sometimes it could just be that 5 minutes of what are a couple of things that I could do. And then that sense of achievement from there, then you can start to build up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those moments where you do self-reflect and check in are pretty important. It's easy for me, and I think many people, to get through part of a day and realize that you're tired, your chest feels tight, you haven't eaten very well, or you're just searching for something to sort of soothe yourself, but actually it's not going to do a great deal of benefit. Tell me how things like fitness, even running the nightclub. So you would have seen a lot of people enjoying themselves there. How are those different outlets? How can they be positive? How can they be overly or negative in a way? What do you see people do in terms of those different habits that they start to bring in, and making sure they get the pendulum in the right sort of position?
I'm a big fan of getting guys moving. And again, some of the things that I might suggest, people might be like, well, isn't that the same for women as well? And if I give you the example of just, I was chatting with a girlfriend this morning and we're both talking about getting our meditation practice on track. So I'm not perfect at all of this, but there are times where I do 5 minutes and there are times I do 20, and she was sharing a similar experience. But what we did in a few minutes where we both just said, oh, this is something I'm working on at the moment. Oh yeah, I've been off track as well. Women can do that very easily, even with strangers. And that's where I notice guys often don't have those conversations as well, where you just get it up and out really quickly and support each other. I'm sure there are some men that do. But what I've noticed is that guys tend to open up a lot more when they move. So often when I'm with a client, if it's face to face, or even if we're on a video coaching session because we're remote, get on the headphones or the AirPods and get moving. So when we're moving and we're not necessarily sort of looking at someone having a confronting conversation, or when we're trying to get out our thoughts. So that's where a lot of people say, oh, when I go for a run, I clear my head, or I get into the pool and swim laps. I actually don't mind what it is, but that connection between how we're moving and we're just getting into the body, that is so important, especially for men. So anything, exercise, breath work, meditation. Again, it doesn't have to be the perfect meditation. I never expect people to clear their thoughts. You can listen to a guided meditation and have someone else do some of the work for you, but it's getting into our body, so we are not ruled by our mind, but we're actually just starting to regulate our nervous system. And some of those basics, sometimes the lingering anxiety or the stress or the tired or just that feeling can be mitigated by a bit of movement, drinking some more water, breathing, having some decent food. I've always been a no frills personal trainer. I don't go to all the fancy stuff. I just get to the basics, and you soon see people feel a whole lot better. And nightclubs as well, right? People are dancing and having fun.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for, particularly not having to sit. I think that a lot of people, not just men, but a lot of people can feel quite challenged to sit across from someone and look in their eyes and have a conversation that
Yeah.
is a little bit vulnerable, right? Because
Yeah.
they're seeing straight into you. Whereas maybe when you're walking along playing golf or going for a run or
Mm.
cycling, you're having a bit of a chat to the person next to you, you're not sort of face to face. You're not in that
Yeah.
what might be felt like a more confrontational position.
Mm.
And again, it's about creating those moments, right? Because if we wait for them to come to us, they rarely come. And I think it'd be great. It's great to hear that if someone's thinking about working with you, that it might be I'll go for a walk, I'll put my headphones in and we'll chat
Mm.
while I'm walking, and therefore it'll maybe feel a bit less challenging to get started and to build that relationship. Maybe
Mm.
this is something I'm interested in, because I find this is a really important part with coaching in particular. One of the things you've got to do with someone when you're going to coach them, I guess, is go from a relationship of almost zero to
Mm.
high levels of, I don't know, is it trust or rapport?
Mm.
Or I'm keen to your thoughts on that, what that is. But what is that you build quickly, and how do you do that when you're working with someone new?
Mm. For most part of my experience, and I think back of all the different industries and clients, and actually I had a role where I was the in-house performance coach at a business. So none of those guys actually wanted me as their coach, and all of a sudden I was sort of foisted upon them, like, here I am. So that was actually a really difficult experience. Some of the things that I draw on, whether I do it consciously or intuitively now, is really try and meet the person where they're at. So that's not me thinking I know best. I've got an outcome. I've got an agenda that I need to meet. There are some coaching sessions where it's only by the end of it that some of the guys actually just start to relax, but because they've just been running and running and running, and they haven't actually had that space to stop and think. Looking at things like behavior styles, how people communicate as well. So if someone's big picture, direct, fast, short, whatever their language might be, or they use lots of metaphors, like really listening to the way someone speaks, their tone of voice. And again, it's not trying to manipulate them. It's just when we're in rapport and we create that level of trust, often that can be enhanced by sort of matching and feeling like we're on the same page with someone. I went for a walk with one of my clients the other day, and we barely said much for the whole walk. And it was only by the time we sort of finished it and asked a few key questions, and I knew he'd relaxed enough. But if I tried to ask some of those deeper questions at the start, I don't think he would have been ready. So and it can really vary. And for the guys that weren't so thrilled about me joining as their coach and eventually worked with them, I think it was just that consistent showing up with trust and saying, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not another woman trying to change you or criticize you, in case that's been their experience, but I'm in your corner to support you and to give you space.
It's such an interesting piece because the LinkedIn is seemingly flooded with coaches and people who are experts and thought leaders, and many of them, probably including me, really focus on creating their expertise, saying this is what I know, this is what I'm here to tell you. But what you seem to be talking about a lot is quite the opposite, which is I'm not here to tell you. I'm here to ask you. I'm here to question and to support, be in your corner. I love that. What do you see? There's, as I said, there's lots of different styles. When you sort of think about coaching and the way you practice or focus on coaching, what do you see as the main differences between the way you do it versus some of those other things that sort of people do around the place?
I've had lots of influence from different leaders, coaches, and mentors over the years. So perhaps intuitively, I draw on lots of those. You actually had a guest on your podcast, Daniel Bungay-Steiner, and his first question is around what's on your mind, when he wrote a great book called The Coaching Habit. And then he has a series of questions from there. Having a bit of a framework can help to sort of start wide and then narrow in to help someone. But I think, like I said, it's really about meeting people where they're at. Part of coaching as well is around helping someone figure out a goal. It can be action focused, holding them accountable. So creating a clear agreement so someone feels like they've made progress. And the outcome that they might be deciding to do, say for the next week or fortnight, whatever it might be, or an intention they're setting for a month, it might not be a big deal to someone else, but for them, that might actually be the small step or the switch that can change everything. So keeping it simple, something that they want, nothing to do with what I want, and something that they're buying into, something that they agree to, a time frame, how you're going to feel when you get that outcome, and then holding them accountable. So I do the basics of coaching, but I think just based on some of the feedback that I've received from the guys that I've worked with, it has been just the fact that I'm there and, like I said, holding space or just giving them that time to express themselves without fear of being judged or criticized.
Yeah, and while you might just do the basics of coaching, I think most people are too busy to do that, right? Then they offer a quick fix, or they offer the simple suggestion, or the quick, this is what you should do. I know men in particular are good at doing that. Here's my advice on how you should handle the situation, which is not always useful for that person or necessarily welcomed all the time. So I've got a couple of questions here. One, I guess, is if I'm a man, I'm hearing this and I'm thinking maybe this is for me or maybe it's not. I guess, how do I make that call? What are the sort of things I might be thinking or feeling that you would say, actually, this is probably a good step for you?
Something around, as you're asking that as well, is just even having space or someone, a coach or otherwise, that you can talk things through. So if you're new to coaching, you're listening to this for the first time, you're like, oh, what is all this coaching bizzo around? For me, very much it's around, as I said, listening, meeting you where you're at, and helping you with an action plan. And even if those steps are quite small, because sometimes when we're trying to think ourselves out of a situation, so much is going on in here. So all the stuff that got us into a situation as we're navigating a change in life and then trying to solve it from the same place, I think that's where a lot of people come unstuck. Because if all our thoughts and all the stuff that was swimming around in our heads were true, probably most of us would be in prison or feeling very unwell at least. So knowing that we can't identify with every single thought and every single feeling that comes up, and just being able to talk it through with someone. Usually once you've aired it, and I know the same for myself working with my coach or talking to my friends as well, you get it up and out and you go, oh, I now know what to do. And it's the path forward. So it's space, action plan, clearing the path forward. Yeah, hope that helps.
Yeah, no, it does. I think it's a really good point because we we can sometimes try and dig our way out of a hole. We've dug ourselves into this hole, so if I just keep on digging, soon we'll get out. And of course, we need to put the shovel down sometimes and look at the world differently. The other thing I was thinking was let's put ourselves in the shoes of maybe a friend, a partner, a wife, a husband, someone who's sitting there thinking, "Hey, there's a man in my life who I'm seeing from the outside, and I think that there's something going on." And I want to, maybe I feel like this might, it's working with Miriam or working with a coach might be a really good thing to help this person, but I just have no idea how to approach that conversation because I'm worried that they're going to see it as a slight, an attack, a put down or an admission of some sort. Talk me through sort of what you would recommend for someone in that position. Is that a position you recognize and familiar with, and what should we do in that space?
Something that's actually been on my mind a lot lately as well, and curious to hear your thoughts, is it's very rare that I'd recommend actually saying to someone, I think you need help. And even that whole conversation about just reach out for help. From most of the guys that I've worked with, and even the ones that, begrudgingly came to appreciate my coaching later on, they weren't often thinking, I need help. And when someone says you need help, it can have the unfortunate impact of saying you're not good enough or there's something wrong with you. And that's what, and understanding the difference between, say, coaching versus counseling and psychotherapy and all, lots of really valid options, is that with coaching, unless you really want to, we don't sit around and talk about your feelings unless it's actually really important for that session. Coaching is very around action plans, results, getting an outcome. So that's where I feel like, depending who you're thinking of in your life, is think about what's going on for them, the sort of language that they use as well. And it might not be the best approach to say, hey, if you need a bit of help, call Mim or book in with a coach. Think about what they're trying to achieve or what they might need help talking things through around. And that would be a really good start. So, for example, someone might be struggling, and I see the typical scenario of like a CEO, they've been in their career, 20, 30 years, and they're thinking about what next, do I stay, do I go, the big changes that someone can be working through, and they just think they have to put their head down and just work through it. But if you had some help, is it possible that you could see things differently? Could you get there faster? Could you get there in a healthier way without causing so much damage? So it's looking at what that person might be doing or trying to achieve. And that's where coaching can actually support doing that in an even better way, a quicker way, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I think it's a really important one. And you're right. If I say to someone, oh, that dress doesn't look good on you, of course that person might take that as an insult and as a slight on them. If I said, hey, I think you might need to see a coach, they could see that as a way of me saying, oh, I'm saying there's something broken there and you need to fix it. And this is where I think it's important for people who have used a coach, who have sort of got support, to talk about their experiences as well, because it's quite, in some ways you might see it paradoxically. If you think, oh, if I need help, if I ask for help, it must mean I'm something wrong with me. But when we look at a lot of the most successful people, they've almost always got coaches, mentors,
Yeah.
supports, people helping them. Um,
Mm,
I think we we sometimes forget, and men maybe more so than most, that we're all flawed. We're all imperfect and a
mm,
little bit broken, and we've all got some sort of craggy edges, right? So it's not an unusual thing, and
yeah.
we need people like yourself to support us in different ways, see the world differently.
Mm. Well, I certainly don't have it all figured out. And, I heard this beautiful quote years ago, I think attributed to Ram Dass, saying we're all just walking each other home. And I think that's a really nice metaphor if you think about that. We've all got different experiences and lessons, and I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. I'm not an expert in every single scenario that my clients might be going through. But if I can be that thought partner, can ask some good questions and give guys that space, um, then that might smooth out some of those edges and help someone feel a bit better along the way.
Well, yeah, and we all need, we've all got certain strengths and capabilities that are
Mm.
amazing, but not everyone has them, and no one's got all of them. There's only one person who thinks they've got them all, but we'll leave him out of it. But most people, we are flawed and come up short on many things, and I
Mm.
guess how to navigate some of those puzzles that we can't solve on our own is such a vital thing.
Yeah.
Um, I want to just end by asking you a few of my empathy card questions. So let's dive in and see which one we got here. We'll start with this one. What's a song? This might be interesting. What's a song that really defines your childhood?
All right, first one that comes to mind, Kylie Minogue. I should feel so lucky. I don't know why, that's the first thing that came in. But if you interviewed my parents, they would say that they had many long, torturous car trips having to listen to Kylie Minogue cassettes. That's how old I am. On repeat. And I know I really loved that song. But it's, I think even now it's a good song, like just even being grateful of what we have, right? And what we can do. So good old Kylie.
Good old Kylie. And cassettes, for those listening and watching in who are a bit younger, these were old, ancient devices used to play music. Uh, um, what's something you're really proud of but don't often talk about?
Hmm. I think, oh, there's a few actually. I used to sing in a choir when I was much younger and traveled the world singing in a choir, which probably sounds every day to some people, but the discipline that we learnt was incredible, actually, just being able to stand and to master your body for hours. There's no sort of coughing and fidgeting and checking your phone, or there wasn't back in those days anyway. um, I'm proud of that time because it actually taught me a lot of discipline that has carried through into my adult life about how to hold myself and how to overcome difficult situations. And then I think even the early years of training in the fitness industry, like training thousands, possibly even hundreds of thousands, but thousands of students, and working across conferences, talking to people. And every now and then I bump into someone and they say, "Oh, I'll always remember this," or you might not know, but you had this impact on me. And I'm proud of working in that time, knowing that I've had an impact in some way on people that I might not even be aware of, but how that is an invitation for all of us as well, just to step back every now and then. And it's such a great question, to
Mm,
know that we might have helped so many people. Yeah.
yeah, we tend to be focused on today and the future, which is important. It's all we can change, but we
Mm.
sometimes forget that the past has some great achievements and things we should be proud of.
Mm.
Final one, who is someone you really admire and why?
My first my first leader, actually going back to the fitness industry, we had a great CEO at the time, and he was quite influential in starting the fitness industry. But he was not only a great leader of the business, and at a time, sort of my early 20s and just, ready for anything. But I had a tipping point where I was self-sabotaging myself from moving into the leadership position that I wanted. And he actually saw what was going on and lent in. And there were too many F-bombs in his conversation that I probably shouldn't repeat on this podcast. But he had a way of leaning in, seeing what was going on for me, and essentially said, if you don't get past this fear, and it was actually around getting my driver's license, he said, then you won't learn the techniques and tools that you'll need to be a leader and to help other people move through their fear as well. So it was a really powerful conversation that has then set me up for so many of those moments still. And I will always remember that, what's the thing I need to do in this moment, because it's giving me building blocks to develop for the next, and, in turn to be able to guide other people.
It's beautiful because it sort of shows that's carried all the way through, and it's what you are helping
Mm,
other people to learn at the moment. This
mm,
there is that element of fear that'll hold us back, and there are reasons we will do and not do the things that we should,
mm,
and I think getting that support, having those people to ask you and to challenge you in in a way that is their style and is authentic, I think such a powerful thing.
mm,
I love what you do, Miriam. I think it's such an important role that we need good people to play. As I said, there's, you don't have to go too far into Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter to find a million people who'll say they'll give you all the answers. But the reality is, unless you ask the right questions, they're all pretty useless. So
mm.
when we talk a lot about empathy, those are the sorts of things that come up so often. How are
Yeah.
you openly exploring? How are you staying consciously
Mm,
curious? How are you helping to inspire that curiosity in others rather than tell them what to do?
yeah.
And I think that empathetic approach, the empathic approach, is typified by the way you describe the way you do what you do, which is brilliant. From the dance floors to squat racks to choirs, IT world, it sounds like quite the journey, but the through line of really understanding why people do what they do and
Yeah.
helping them to be better versions of themselves comes through pretty strong, Miriam.
Well, I just love it, and I love what you do as well. So it's been a really great experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I look forward to seeing you in person real soon.